Hello and welcome to a trash summary of Week 10 in the Overwatch League, plus the community MVP results from this week. The primary highlights from the Overwatch League this week were the Vancouver Titans getting humiliated in their first games back, Philadelphia have moved up to second after 2 more wins, and the San Francisco Shock have got their revenge on the Los Angeles Gladiators. Moving on to the first match of the week, the Hangzhou Spark versus the Chengdu Hunters. Hangzhou won this match 3-0, first winning Nepal 2-0, Hollywood 3-1, and Hanamura 2-1. This left Hangzhou's record at 3 wins and 2 losses, with a map ratio of +1. They didn't play again the next day, so this record would leave them at 8th at the end of the next day after all the teams had played. While Chengdu were left at 1 win and 4 losses with a map ratio of -4, but they would play again the next day against the Vancouver Titans. Moving on to the community MVP votes, Godspeed got the 3 points with his percentage of 59.6. Gooseway got the 2 points with his percentage of 48.1, and Sarsen got the 1 point with his percentage of 40.4. For Hangzhou's positive, it was a really strong win, and it's brought a lot of good stuff to the team, such as motivation, a big boost into their map differential, which was suffering lately, and it also puts them into the top 8. And I couldn't really find a negative for them because they just did so well in this game. But it was the opposite for Chengdu, because I could not find a positive for them, and the negative was they got absolutely demolished, which puts them even further down the standings. Moving on to the Vancouver Titans versus the Guangzhou Charge. Guangzhou won this match 0-3, first winning Nepal 1-2, Eichenwald 1-2, and Volskaya 0-2. This left Vancouver's record at 2 wins and 1 loss, with a map ratio of +1, while Guangzhou were left at 3 wins and 2 losses with a map ratio of +1. Both teams would play again the next day. Moving on to the community MVP votes, Happy got the 3 points with his percentage of 65.4. Nero got the 2 points with his percentage of 57.7, and Krong got the 1 point with his percentage of 53.8. For Vancouver's positive, I put they finally played, which is something, but the negative is they were absolutely humiliated by this really good Guangzhou team. For Guangzhou's positive, it was a dominant win over the Season's 2 runner-up, and that's always good, and I couldn't really find a negative for them because they did really well in this match. Moving on to the Philadelphia Fusion versus the Paris Eternal. Philadelphia won this match in a reverse sweep, winning it 3-2. They lost Ilios 1-2, and also lost Hollywood 3-4, but then they would win Paris 2-1, Dorado 2-1, and Oasis 2-1 to win the match. This left Philadelphia's record at 7 wins and 1 loss with a map ratio of +14, but they would play again the next day. For Paris, it left them at 5 wins and 3 losses with a map ratio of +4. They wouldn't play again the next day, but at the end of the next day, these rankings would leave them 5th. Moving on to the community MVP votes, Carpe got the 3 points with his percentage of 86.5. Alarm got the 2 points with his percentage of 50, and Funny Astro got the 1 point with his percentage of 28.8. For Philadelphia's positive, this win has put them up to second, and that's always a good thing. They have been rising up the ranks for the past few weeks, and good on them for finally getting to the top 2. They will potentially take first soon if Seoul eventually lose a match. For Philadelphia's negative, they almost got 3-0'd. It seems they weren't expecting the Paris team to do very well without Exy, but Paris came out and did show them a thing or two in the first 2 maps. Then Philadelphia got themselves going and came back to win the match. For Paris' positive, they challenged the potentially the best team in the league and almost beat them again. And they didn't have Exy, which makes it even better. But the negative is they got reverse swept after having the match nearly in the bag, and that's never a good feeling for a team or a coach on the team, or players on the team, getting reverse swept when you almost have the game in the bag, and it will hurt especially more since it was against Philadelphia, this top team. Moving on to the Houston Outlaws versus the Boston Uprising. Houston won this match 3-1, first winning Lijiang Tower 2-0, then they lost Hollywood 1-2, but then they won on Volskaya 2-1 and Route 66 1-0. This left Houston's record at 3 wins and 6 losses with a map ratio of -6, but they will play again the next day against the Toronto Defiant. while Boston were left at 1 win and 6 losses with a map ratio of -14, and this left them 20th at the end of the next day as they would not play again. Moving on to the community MVP votes, Dante got the 3 points with his percentage of 67.9. Meko got the 2 points with his percentage of 56.6, and Linksa got the 1 point with his percentage of 54.7. For Houston's positive, I put it's their 3rd win in the past 5 matches, and that's a big improvement from this poor start that this team had, as they lost their first 4 to 5 games, and now they are up to 3 wins from their past 5 matches, and that's really good. But the negative is that they still don't look like a play-in team. They still look like the team that's able to beat the teams below them, but they can't beat the teams above them. For Boston's positive, I put they're still unbeaten on Hollywood. The only reason I put this was because I really can't find a positive other than that. But the negative is there's no one worse than them. Boston are the worst team in the league, and I just can't think of a team that they will be able to beat. Moving on to the community MVP votes, Decay got the 3 points with his percentage of 86.8. Doha got the 2 points with his percentage of 67.9, and Gamzu got the 1 point with his percentage of 41.5. For the positives and negatives, they were really simple here. Washington, they don't have a positive, they were obliterated, and that's their negative. They were obliterated and humiliated by this really strong looking Dallas team, with Dallas's positive being they looked really strong and it's a really good win. It helps the map ratio and it helps put them up higher on the standings. And I couldn't find a negative for them because they just did so damn well in the match. Moving on to the Chengdu Hunters versus the Vancouver Titans. Chengdu won this match 3-1, first losing Busan 0-2, but then they took the rest of the maps, winning Eichenwald 2-1, Volskaya 2-1, and Route 66 3-1. This left Chengdu's record at 2 wins and 4 losses, with a map ratio of -2, and this has left them 16th in the standings at the end of the day. While for Vancouver, this has left them at 2 wins and 2 losses, with a map ratio of -1, and this has left them 10th at the end of the day. Moving on to the community MVP votes, Jinmu got the 3 points, with his percentage of 73.6. Amen got the 2 points with his percentage of 56.6, and Leave got the 1 point with his percentage of 52.8. For Chengdu's positive, they ended their losing streak as they had lost the past 3 games they had played, so good on them for finally getting a win. I couldn't really find a negative for them because they did really well here. For Vancouver's positive, they put Slime back in, so now they have an actual main healer playing for them. But their negative is they went 0 wins, 2 losses after not playing for about 9 weeks straight. That's definitely not what you want to see after that huge stretch of not playing. Like, yeah, they did move over to Korea, but they did have a lot of time to practice before they did move over. Moving on to the Shanghai Dragons versus the Guangzhou Charge. Shanghai won the match 3-0, first winning Ilios 2-1, then Hollywood 2-1, and Paris 4-3. This left Shanghai's record at 4 wins and 1 loss, with a map ratio of +8, and this has left them 4th in the standings. While for Guangzhou, they were left at 3 wins and 3 losses, with a map ratio of -2, and they have been left at 11th in the standings. Moving on to the community MVP votes, Fleder got the 3 points, with his percentage of 67.9. DM got the 2 points with his percentage of 60.4, and Void got the 1 point with his percentage of 52.8. For Shanghai's positive, I put the big win has put them in the top 4 because they have finally moved up to the top 4, where I personally think they belong, and I couldn't find a negative for this team because the match went really well for them. While it was the opposite for the Guangzhou Charge, I couldn't find the positive for them, and the negative is their map differential is suffering because that's another 3-0 loss, and even though they have the same amount of wins and losses, their map differential is still in the negatives. Moving on to the Houston Outlaws versus the Toronto Defiant, Houston won in a reverse sweep. They first lost Nepal 0-2, and then Barney 0-2, but then they would take Paris 3-2, Rialto 1-0, and Lijiang Tower 2-0. This has left Houston's record at 4 wins and 6 losses, with a map ratio of -5, and this has left them 14th in the standings, while for Toronto, they are left at 3 wins and 5 losses with a map ratio of -3, which has left them 15th in the standings. Now moving on to the community MVP votes, Dante got another 3 points with his percentage of 71.7, Linksa got the 2 points with his percentage of 54.7, and Mecco got the 1 point with his percentage of 37.7. Houston's positive was the reverse sweep has got them a win streak now, which is really good. And negative, the exact same thing from earlier. They still don't look like a playing team. They are barely beating teams that are slightly worse than them. While for Toronto, their positive was they showed some dominance in the first 2 maps, which is always good. But then they lost the match after a dominant start, and that's the negative I chose for them. Moving on to the Philadelphia Fusion versus the Atlanta Reign. Philly won this match 3-2. They first won Busan 2-1, then Hollywood 3-2. But then Atlanta took Hanamura 0-1 and Dorado 0-3. But then Philadelphia would win on Elios 2-1, taking the match 3-2. This left Philadelphia's record at 8 wins and 1 loss, with a map ratio of +15, which left them second in the standings. While Atlanta were left at 3 wins and 2 losses with a map ratio of +6, which left them 6th in the standings. Moving on to the community MVP votes, Carpe got the 3 points, with his percentage of 77.4. Lam got the 2 points, with his percentage of 54.7. And Funny Astro got the 1 point, with his percentage of 41.5. For Philadelphia's positive, I put the win puts them up to second. There were a lot of positives coming out of this match, but I decided to put this because they are now up into the top 2 when they should most likely be first because they have won 8 matches out of 9, and it's just really good for them. For their negative, I put they almost lost the match after easily winning the first 2 maps. It's not the best look to easily win the first 2 maps and then get easily beaten on the next 2 if you're in second and one of the top teams, but they did come to the senses and win on Ilios to take the match, so maybe it was just a bit of a brain fade and they didn't know what was happening for those 2 maps. For Atlanta's positive, they challenged a potentially the best team in the Overwatch League, same positive as Paris had, but the negative is they lost the first 2 maps really badly, which put them in a bad spot for the remaining 3, as it put more pressure on the players to win the maps and not focus on... Well, it just had to force them to play more riskily so they would win the maps. Moving on to the San Francisco Shock versus the Los Angeles Gladiators. San Fran got their revenge, taking the match 3-0. The first one Ilios 2-1, then Eichenwald 4-3, and then Volskaya 3-2. This left San Fran's record at 3 wins and 2 losses, with a map ratio of +1, and this has left them 7th in the standings. While the Glads are left at 2 wins and 3 losses, with a map ratio of -2, which has left them 12th in the standings. Moving on to the community MVP votes, ANS got the 3 points with his percentage of 77.4. Rascal got the 2 points with his percentage of 49.1. And Super got the 1 point with his percentage of 47.2. For San Fran's positive, I'd put revenge is sweet. They got their revenge from the match 2 to 3 weeks ago. I don't remember when it exactly was. I think it was 2 weeks. And they got a better map differential because of it. And I couldn't find the negative for them because they did really well in this match. For the Gladiators, the only positive I could find was the maps were close. But the negative had to be, was the other win against San Fran a fluke? Because they didn't do that well in this match. Moving on to the community MVP leaderboards. Carpe is in first with a whopping 24 points. Exy is still in second with 15 points, while Fleta has moved up to third with 12 points. In equal fourth with 11 points there is Corey, Jinmu, and Dante, while in 7th there is Decay on 10 points. And then in tied on 8th, we have Hotba, Glister, and Shawfall all on 9 points. I'll get you guys to read the rest, as there haven't been too many changes, except for Gooseway going up to tied second in the top 10 tank players, and Alarm taking first in the top 10 support players on 8 points. Moving on to the Overwatch League standings, Seoul is still in first, no change from last week. Philadelphia have gone up 1 spot to second, and New York have gone up 1 spot to third. Shanghai have gone up 2 spots to 4th, and Paris have gone up 2 spots to 5th. Paris are down 1 spot to 6th, San Fran is up 3 spots to 7th, and Hangzhou is up 3 spots to 8th. London is down 1 spot to 9th, while Vancouver are down 8 spots to 10th, the biggest drop this week. Guangzhou are in 11th, the same spot from last week, while the Glads are down 3 spots into 12th. Dallas are up 4 spots into 13th, while Houston are up 5 spots into 14th, the biggest jump this week. Toronto is in 15th, down 2 spots, while Chengdu is still in 16th. Both the Valiant and the Mayhem have dropped 3 spots to 17th, while the Washington Justice have dropped 1 spot to 19th, and Boston are still in 20th. Thank you to everyone who's watched this video, and please subscribe. Also, a huge thank you to the 52 people who voted in this week's Community MVP polls.